The notion that when money becomes more and more of an idea, less tangible, and therefore more abstract, it changes the way that we interact with it on a regular basis. And there's anecdotal evidence of abstraction everywhere around us. All you have to do is listen carefully to people who say, I loaned my child or grandchild a phone, and a month later I had all these errant in-app charges showing up on my bill. In 2014, Apple reimbursed customers for in-app purchases that were unapproved, mostly by children, to the tune of $32.5 million. Last but not least, I had a conversation with some teenagers who told me that $100,000 a year really wasn't that much money. And I said, really, why do you think that? They each said, well, we both have $500,000 in our ATM machines on Grand Theft Auto, which is a very popular and somewhat sketchy video game popular today. I believe that kids today are being raised in a world where money is no longer real. It's actually an illusion, but it has very real consequences. Peter Drucker, famed leadership guru, said that banking and finance industries today are less about money and more about information. And yet young people today don't get that information. They don't get the experiences of money early on. We are under this not so subtle societal shift in the way that we pay each other today. It's estimated that there are trillions of dollars circling the globe in our global economy every single day, yet only 4% of that money is actually in coin or currency. The rest is all digital, data packets, ones and zeros. And today's digital native youth, they don't see people paying with cash or checks. In fact, if ever you're in a line and someone in front of you pulls out their checkbook to pay, you are liable to say to yourself, really, a checkbook? This is going to take forever. You're laughing because it's true. The currency of today is digital. Many of these kids equate spending with credit and debit cards, with Google Wallet and PayPal and Zap. The first time that I used Apple Pay, it was like showing the caveman fire. It was amazing. But what snapped me back to reality was hearing my son behind me say, I sure wish I had a phone so I could buy stuff. You see, money to a young person is somewhat abstract anyway. And when we further the abstraction by waving a magic band or putting our phone over a sensor and giving the thumbprint, all it does is it furthers the abstraction. It's actually a recipe for financial disaster later in life to the uneducated, because to a young person, they see money as limitless because they have no concept of the back end until it comes around to bite them in the back end. I've seen this firsthand in my work with university students, young people that borrow and spend untold amounts of money, having no concept or understanding of the increase in payments, the decrease in lifestyle, and the challenges they'll face later on. In the UK and the US, student debt is a ballooning problem. In the US, we are at $1.2 trillion in student loan debt, second only to mortgage debt in the US. 1 in 3 students are delinquent. 1 in 5 are in default. It's a huge problem. And the reason that this is concerning for all of us as a global economy is this. Dun & Bradstreet found that people spend 12 to 18% more when using credit cards over cash. They have yet to do a study how much more we'll spend with a magic band or a phone, but I can imagine it would be 15 to 20% or 18 to 25%. And all you need to do is read the headlines in the newspapers and magazines across the world today. Places like The Guardian and The Washington Post, Fortune and Forbes, these are the headlines we're seeing. New consumer debt reaching a 7-year high in the UK. Consumer debt hitting an all-time high in the US. Choking on credit card debt. The credit card debt crisis, the next economic domino. And what happens when people overspend and they get in over their head with money? Unfortunately, the Money Charity says that in the UK right now, 1 person every 5 minutes and 3 seconds is either declared insolvent or bankrupt. To put this into perspective, since I started speaking today, 2 people in this country have declared bankruptcy. In the UK, demos.org says that Americans aged 25 to 34 have the second highest rate of bankruptcy. 25-year-olds. And the question on everyone's mind should be, why? Why is this happening? And in my simplistic view, it is this. Because the money they're spending isn't real. It's an abstraction. So to stem this tide with the next generation, we have to bring them up to understand that they are living in a world where they have to make very real money decisions, in a world where money is largely an illusion but has very, very real consequences. Because I want your children and mine to be super successful financially, consider any of the following. If you're going to spend money on children, give them a set amount of money and let them spend it. Let them tangibly feel the money go through their hands. Let them succeed or fail with minor consequences, so that later in life, when they're making the major decisions, they understand there are major consequences that go along. For older kids, it's this. Set a budgeted amount for school clothes and supplies and what have you, and give them that amount of money. And when they are done spending it, it's done. And here's the key. They get to spend it with your subtle guidance, your subtle mentorship, your subtle supervision. And whether you call it an allowance, you call it chores, commission for chores, or you call it a weekly stipend, every single child from the age of 5 on up needs to be given some tangible amount of money on a weekly basis so that they understand how to function in a cashless society someday. Better to teach young people the habit of saving when they have a little bit of money to save than try to teach savings when they have no money because they're in over their head. The first step is honestly quite easy. It's about educating the next generation to make decisions in a world where money is largely an illusion but has very, very real consequences. And the reason it's so important for all of us as a global society to do this is this next generation coming up will inherit the global economy that we are handing to them, and we will precariously place it on their shoulders. We owe it to them to set them up for financial success. Thank you. Thanks.